Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Jeff Willis Show. Today, I have with me David C.M. Carter. Now, David is the CEO, mentor, and founder of Entelechy Academy. He has crafted a unique character development strategy that supports millions of people in becoming the best version of their professional selves. With over 40 years of experience as a successful serial entrepreneur and the global success of his self-help book, Breakthrough, selling over 100,000 copies, David is well equipped to provide future generations with knowledge and skills to thrive in the business world. So, David, thank you for coming on the show. It's an absolute pleasure. And you're zooming in from 𝓲𝓵𝓵. And I did like your description or what the meaning of slaughter is in the English language and in the English countryside. Tell us what a slaughter is.
A slaughter is a boggy marsh, which means that in the winter, the floodplains are full of water, so all the fields are muddy everywhere. So if you look up 𝓲𝓵𝓵 on the internet, it could easily win the most beautiful village in Britain award every year. It is a stunning little tiny hamlet with 40 houses, but it does get boggy in the winter.
So it's quintessential English village.
Yes.
So that means it should have a pub. Is that correct?
It doesn't have a pub, actually.
Okay.
There is a hotel in the village that has got a bar that they've decorated to look like a pub, but they're not particularly welcoming to villagers. So my local is in the village next door, which is also where I walk my dog in the winter because it's not muddy there.
Okay. So, David, tell us a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur, because you've done quite a few things. And then we're also going to get to where you're up to with your new company. But you just finished high school and you didn't go and do college or university. So why was that?
Well, actually, I started my entrepreneurial career a long time before I left school. Mm-hmm. I joke about it, but it's kind of true in a way. I'd already had 2 exits by the time I left school.
Right.
One, I was a sole trader and discovered that the golfers at my local golf course weren't very good. And if I could walk around the golf course with a rucksack, I could pick up all these brand new golf balls and I could sell them to them back in the car park. And the caddy master decided I was taking too much of his profit, so he bought my business out and maybe he turned me into a caddy.
Okay.
And then when I was 13, I started a babysitting business, and I provided a super VIP service because I'd offer to the mums that I'd go over and cook supper for their children and do their homework so they could spend more time getting ready to go out. And that became very popular, and I hired some more people. And then when I moved, I sold the business to Fiona on a handshake that I'd get 10% of the revenues for the next 12 months, which she honored. So by the time I left school, I'd already done 2 exits. Why didn't I go to university? The short version of that is that throughout my secondary school education, I had worked extremely hard and prepared myself to go into the army and become a James Bond.
Right.
And unfortunately, I had a major hip operation a couple of years before I left school, which meant that I couldn't have passed the medical to do something I'd worked very hard and trained for 7 years.
Right.
And I didn't have a plan B. And I also got married very young. And so I wanted to earn some money. And it was also in the famous winter of discontent and the economic carnage that, the strikes and everything. So in fact, I'd have 3 jobs. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But I got a job because, I'd left school, had a got married, and it was a horrible economic situation. In fact, I had 3 jobs. And I worked for a bank, and then a year or so later, a couple of years later, I saw an advert which said, "Come and join the racy, pacey world of high finance and important deadlines. Become an international officer trainee executive with the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation." I thought, that's got my name written all over it, and that sounds a bit James Bondish. And I applied and got the job. And so for the first 10 years of my career, I worked in investment banking and venture capital for a couple of banks, and I worked all around the world. I worked in the Middle East, the Far East, East and West Coast America, Germany, Switzerland. And so I had a fantastic, like, real life MBA program, and being paid well whilst I was doing it. And I always say that even though I didn't really enjoy the job, I loved the travel, and I didn't like the culture in the company, but I was fascinated by these businesses that we invested in and bought. And I went native. I was always like, oh, how can we make this more profitable? And how can we, whereas my colleagues were like, David, businesses aren't for running, they're for buying and selling. And that phrase stuck in my head is like, no, these have got people in them and customers. And I want to delight the customers and delight the employees. And so culturally, I was a misfit in venture capital. You know, I remember one year in December, the chairman, who I loved, he was a great mentor, he came round to my desk and said, right, David, we need you to sell this company by Christmas because you bought it for 10 million. We can flog it for 40 million and we can make a big bonus this year. I was like, no, we're in the middle of this and we're doing this big turnaround and all the rest of it, and we'll be worth 80 million next year. And he's like, no, sell it before Christmas. And I just thought, you know, they really are assets that you buy at one price, sell at another price 3 years later and make a profit. And they don't care about anything that happens in the middle.
Yep.
And anyway, because we got a record bonus that year, in the April or March or whenever it was, I got called into his office. Well, young man, record bonus, record this, record share options, record year. I think it's time you moved on.
Right.
And given that there were 8 partners in the business, and I was contributing at least 40% of all new business, it was an interesting, but I smiled and I looked at him and he said, David, you're just on the wrong side of the table. Stop consulting and financing entrepreneurs and go and be one.
Right.
And because I had a whopping great big bonus, you know, I could have lived for a couple of years probably without a salary. And I thought, you know, financially, I'm never going to be in a better place. Like all great stories, my first venture failed. I didn't end up buying it. I ended up doing loads of work to buy a company called 𝓲𝓵, which was the original filofax business. And it had an office in Paris and London and New York, so a bit of international. And it was a super luxury brand. And I raised the money to buy it and everything. And literally at the 11th hour, a big publishing company came in and trumped our bid, you know, by a lot of money. So I couldn't
match it.
And then I did, what did I do? Then I did golf courses for 10 years. I built up 2 businesses. The first one I built up and sold to a trade buyer. The second one I built up and floated on the stock exchange. And that's when I had a major tectonic plate shift in my life, and I ended up being a single parent to a 7-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. And I wanted to find something to do that was very family friendly, could work from home maybe, and being the CEO of a public company and a single parent weren't mutually compatible. So I resigned. And whilst I was busy thinking about what I wanted to do next, loads of people turned up on my doorstep and said, oh, could you help me decide whether to float my business, raise some money, expand overseas, bring in a chairman, whatever the hell it was, sell the business? And so I ended up with half a dozen really interesting businesses and CEOs. And I seem to be getting more and more inquiries. Anyway, after about a year, the kids and I went over to my mum and dad's for Sunday lunch. And my mum said, "Oh, it's going so well for you, isn't it?" And I said, "Well, it is going well, Mum, but I've got no time to think about what I want to do next." And she said, "Oh, I thought this was what you were doing next." And in the drive home, I remember thinking, no, I'm actually really good at doing this. I really love doing it. It's paying the bills and it's making a difference. So unless I wake up in the morning and think of a reason not to do this, maybe this is what I'm doing next. And 15 years later, I had built up what eventually became the world's leading CEO mentoring company with offices and clients all around the world. And that was a fantastic learning experience for me. I learned so much and achieved a lot as well. But after 15 years, I was bored. There wasn't a fourth region to open. And I wanted to democratize what we were doing and cascading it into the whole organization to help everybody in the company become their Entelechy, the ultimate version of them with all of their potential fully actualized, not just the CEO. And if there's been a red thread throughout my career, I think it's always been about helping other people become their best version. And I feel I'm my best version of myself if I'm helping other people become their best version. There's been a sort of red thread. And I think, 6, 7, 8 years ago, whenever it was, I sold that mentoring company. I decided that the rest of my life I was going to dedicate to my legacy project, which would be helping anybody, anywhere, become their Entelechy through developing their character.
Yeah. So really, the Japanese would call it, you did find your ikigai.
Yes, very much so.
So tell us, Entelechy, what is the meaning and who was the inventor of the word? And give some examples that you gave to me before we hit the record button about what it means. So
sure. So Entelechy, the word, the concept was coined by Aristotle 2,500 years ago. The Entelechy of an acorn is an oak tree. The Entelechy of a caterpillar is a butterfly. So the Entelechy of Jeff Boulas is the ultimate version of Jeff with all of his potential fully actualized. And Aristotle also coined another phrase, which I love, which is character determines destiny. And what he meant by that is that we all end up in life, wherever we end up, as a direct function of our character, which everyone knows ultimately makes sense. And a lot of people might, when you talk about character, they'll say, "Oh, well, you're born with your character, aren't you? There's nothing you can do about it." But very quickly you can say to them, well, no, that's a myth. And there are 54 character qualities which underpin all skills. And every baby born on the planet is born with the innate ability to be good at all 54 of those skills. But they might get parented out of them or schooled out of them or churched out of them or workplaced out of them, but they still got the innate skills. Let me tell you it's one of my new favorite stories. So about 5 months ago, we hired a senior sales guy. And everybody in our company is working on a professional and a personal character quality all the time. We do a new one every month or whenever you feel like it. And he chose to work, his professional character quality was disciplined. And he asked around in the company what other people did to be more disciplined. And one of his colleagues gave him a great tip, which he loved. And a salesman's got to hit the phone, send emails, and be disciplined. And he realized that he was really badly distracted all the time by his mobile phone.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pinging a Slack message or an email or WhatsApp message or whatever. And his colleague said, put the phone in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Dedicate 90 minutes to your calls and your emails. Have a break for 15 minutes. Check your messages, then go back and hit the phone. And he said at the end of the first week, he'd saved 4 hours or created 4 hours of more productive work and made more calls and got more pipeline, blah, blah, blah. So a really simple shift in behavior and being more disciplined had a big impact. But my favorite part of the story, he decided to work on being more kind in his home life. And he had a number of ideas that he picked up from colleagues, to thank one person every day for, being a nice person or doing something nice for him or whatever. Anyway, on the Friday evening at the end of his first week of work, his wife sat him down and said, look, are you having an affair or something? And he says, no, why? Why do you ask? Well, you've taken the trash out, you've taken the dog out to the toilet before bedtime, you've done this, you've taken the washing in from the line. This new company, are they giving you drugs or something? And he's like, no, I'm just trying to be more kind. And she said, well, it's working, keep taking the drugs or whatever it is. But, he realized in a week that he could work on 2 character qualities and dial them up consciously and have a dramatically different outcome at the end of the week. So these 54 character qualities are easy to learn, easy to dial up. And, I can sum up the Intelliki business story in 2 very short sentences. When we go and describe it and show it and demo it to companies, they say, why has no one ever thought of this before? It's so obvious and simple and clever. And we've pulled it together in a very high-tech way. But when we show it to the young people in the workforce, their number one question is, why weren't we taught this at college or at university or at school? It's like, it's so obvious you need these skills, but no one's ever taught us them. So anyway, that's what Entelechy is.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I try to be kind as possible, and I sent some flowers to my partner in her office in the city of Sydney. And she said, why'd you send them? You'd done something wrong. I said, no, I'm just getting in early. So, so the question I do have, though, is those 54 character traits,
character qualities.
Yeah, qualities. Sorry, character qualities. Are they your curation from your experience in life, or does Aristotle mention them? Where did it come from?
There are hundreds of character qualities, and there's a research institute in character called 𝓵𝓵 in America, and they got a very there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of character qualities, and some of them are sufficiently close to each other that they're really synonyms. And you might use the word courageous and I might use the word bold
or bravery
or or brave. A character quality is something you are or can be.
And now
you can't be bravery, you can be brave.
Yes.
Anyway, and someone else might use that word. And the point is, we're all really talking about the same thing. So we took all of the synonyms and we put them through a computer called Bob and said, what's the most highly used frequency word? And then the second and the third in common language. So we ended up taking the most used word out of those synonyms. All the synonyms are available for you to see as well, in case you want to choose another one. But also, there are 54 character qualities that we've selected out of these thousands that apply in the workplace. If you want to be a parent or you want to be a partner, there's probably other character qualities that you might need as well, but you don't need those as much in the workplace. So we talked with over 200 companies and HR departments and asked them to choose the character qualities that they felt were missing in their workforce, that if they could develop them would. And so it was a 2-year process of, on the ground research to end up with a matrix and a framework that was robust, that the learners said they wanted to engage with it. The buyers said it made sense to them, and we felt there was enough research and underpinning behind it that it worked as a framework.
Mm-hmm.
But
so obviously this comes.
By the way, can I just add on?
Yes.
When we were doing this as well, a big part of our research was asking the employers what the soft skills were that they wanted, that were lacking in their workforce. And without going through the whole story, there are 77 essential soft skills that all of that research threw up. But we then mapped the 54 character qualities against the 77 soft skills. And to this day, we've never found that there's a character quality missing from any soft skill or any hard skill that anyone brings us. So the model does work. It's had 2 or 3 years of severe panel beating to try and break it up, but it hasn't been broken up yet. And so over the last few years, the number of companies we've spoken to who have said, oh, time management is such a problem in our company. People turn up to work late, hang around the coffee machine too long, spend too long at lunch, too much time on their social media. And actually, that isn't time management. That it's been called time management, but actually it's honesty and respect. If the office hours are Monday to Friday 9 to 5 and you get an hour's break for lunch, you've got to be at your desk at 9 o'clock. You can't go home before 5 o'clock and get an hour for lunch, and you can't spend half an hour of every hour checking your TikTok account or your social media account or WhatsApping your friends. So companies call it time management to be politically correct, but actually what they're really talking about is engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you send someone on a time management course and tell them what time management is and the benefits of time management, but you don't teach them how to implement it, guess what? A month later, there's no benefit to the company or the employer at all of that course. So we look at the underpinning character qualities of being accountable, responsible, disciplined, organized, efficient, and reliable. And that's what we teach the learner to become those 6 character qualities. You don't ever need to send someone on a time management course who's accountable, responsible, disciplined, and organized. So that's what we do. We're teaching the subdomain of character qualities rather than the soft skill, higher level domain, which we don't believe you can ever teach in a way that works and sticks unless you teach the underpinning character qualities.
Yeah. So what was the inspiration to cross the threshold and strike out on this adventure with Entelechy? Was there saying, well, this is what I love doing this, I'm good at doing this? Was there a moment, and are you doing it? And the other question I'm curious about is, are you doing this on your own, or are you doing it with some other friends or colleagues?
There are 30 employees in Entelechy in the UK. There are 15 colleagues in India in our technology centre. So there's 45 of us in total today. We'll probably be 55 by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 44 shareholders,
Mm-hmm.
who are all angel investors. We're hopefully in the next month or so going to finish a £5 million fundraising. And we'll probably end up with 48, 49 shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got shareholders and I've got colleagues in the company. So it's absolutely not a one-man band at all.
No, I didn't.
And, you know, I've got 2 direct reports into me in the company. Amy, who's our chief operating officer, she looks after the consultancy team, customer service team, and everything to do with operations. And 𝓬𝓪𝓻 has product, sales, marketing, learning, and data insights reporting into him. And then I've separately got a part-time finance director reporting into me. But I've also got 2 people who head up our international scaling team. So we've got a strategic partnerships team with 2 people, because we're going out to India in November to pitch to 8 companies who between them have over 1 million employees, and they're very interested in working with us. We're talking to a university group in America who've got 250,000 students. So my the boiler room of the UK business is really run by 𝓬𝓬 and Amy, and I'm now spreading my wings to scale the business internationally.
Right.
And I think that to answer the other half of your question, towards the end of my 15 years at 𝓤�RIC, I was bored. You know, I'd opened 3 regional offices around the world. They were all running perfectly fine. There wasn't a 4th region to open. And I think I'm better as a rocket launcher than a rocket in orbit manager. And so I think I'm really good at spotting an opportunity, putting a team together, exciting a team to come together to make that work. And so the UK operation, the boiler room, as we call it, I think it is run a lot better by Amy and 𝓬𝓬 than I could ever run it. And actually what I'm doing, developing both of them, is so that Amy's starting to think about how does she develop boiler rooms in India and America and Australia and other places that we open up. And the same with 𝓬𝓬. And so who I'm building up to be the CEO in the next few years. So I love finding great people, developing them, nurturing them, mentoring them to become their Entelechy. And my joy in life is developing other people to become their Entelechy, and I think I become my Entelechy if I do that with other people. And so I think the boiler room in the UK is fantastic now. And sometimes, well, not sometimes, every time I go to every other month offsite with the whole team, I sit there and think, wow, it's really cool what we put together. We've got amazing people and they're all enjoying their work and we're doing great business, and it's really cool to put this together. But then I think, right, what am I going to go and do? Let's take this overseas and let's scale it. And so it's all, to me, about finding really, really high quality people and then nurturing and mentoring them to become their Entelechy. Steve Jobs had a great phrase that I learned watching a film about him a few years ago, that we don't hire great people and tell them what to do. We hire great people so they can tell us what to do.
Yes, I totally get it.
And I think I've always done that throughout my career, but it was kind of nice to know that I wasn't the only lunatic in the asylum doing that. But and sometimes, like Amy, who's worked for me for 6 years now, I've spotted someone And I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do with you, but I'm going to get you on the bus and we'll figure out what your seat is later. But in the meantime, until I figure out the right seat, you go and do this because there's a problem over there and you can go and sort that out.
Yeah.
And so I think Amy's worked for me for 6 years now. Yeah, about 6 years. And she's probably had, this is her fourth job in those 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And she's still growing and developing. And so, and same with Kalen, you know, I think he's been with us a year now and he'll grow and continue. And so.
That's fantastic. I do love the phrase you said that you wanted to democratize helping people realize their full potential. And because obviously with the CEO mentoring, you are only doing it for the C-suite essentially. So
well, not even the C-suite, the CEO.
The CEO. So you've been doing that, you're a bit bored and you're going, I want to democratize this. I want to take this to the world to help every employee be the best version of themselves to realize their potential. So was it a creeping realization out of being bored and the gelling of your experience, passion, and what you're good at? Was it a creeping realization where you went, I'm bored, I need, and then there was this light bulb moment? How did that, and obviously the word from Aristotle, Entelechy, is key to it. So when was that? Was that, and then, because you obviously would have said, okay, this is the idea, I'm really ready to run with this ball now. When did that happen? Was it 5 years ago? And why?
The answer to your question, it was a combination of an itch over a long period of time and asking myself, maybe we could scale this beyond the CEO to the C-suite and the senior leadership team and maybe even down into the bowels of the organization. And so what I did, with that sort of, how could we do this? Would it work? I started doing some experiments outside of the companies I was mentoring.
Yes.
And for many, many, many years, for every super expensive fee-paying client, I always had a pro bono client.
Right.
Who ran a charity, an NGO, a not-for-profit, a social enterprise, or whatever. And what I started to do was experiment in those pro bono clients.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. And I can tell you, so I'd had I want to do something slightly differently here, but I was being paid a lot of money to do a particular thing a particular way with my fee-paying clients. But I felt I could experiment and do a pilot or two with some of my pro bono clients, and it worked. But I can tell you, there was a day I was actually in South Africa in a coal mining business where I mentored the CEO. And I was listening to some story in the boardroom about something that wasn't working, why it wasn't working. I thought, that just doesn't add up to me. And so I asked Chris, the CEO, if I could be given a driver and go out into the community and interview some people and talk. And he was like, are you sure you want to do that? And I said, yeah, I do. I don't believe what I was told in that room just now. And I went out into the community. I ended up spending 2 days interviewing and filming people. And found out what the real problem was, and then reported that back to Chris and the senior leadership team. And that's when I had the epiphany, is like, if I could get those people in that village to work on these 3 or 4 things, this is going to change the outcome for this entire company. Mm-hmm. And I was given permission to do that by the CEO, and it had the most dramatic impact on a company with 98,000 employees.
Wow.
And I thought, this is going to work. And so I tried it in a few small ways with a few pro bono clients. I then had one opportunity to at scale with a massive employer, and it absolutely worked. And I thought, no, this is what I want to do now. I've spent 15 years building up this amazing little company, but my journey, I want to go off and change the world. And my colleagues were very happy in a nice, comfortable, environment, which was fine, but I wanted to do something a bit more adventurous. And by the way, having then resigned, it probably took me the thick end of 5 years to figure out the business model, the strategy, the product. I knew I wanted to do it, but I wasn't quite sure how to do it using technology at scale.
Yeah. And that's
been 5 years of experimentation.
Yeah, and that's the next question I was going to ask, is because mentoring a CEO is obviously a one-on-one. It doesn't scale well. In fact, it doesn't scale. So how do you scale Entelechy? I'd be intrigued by that. Is a combination of technology, systems and processes. Tell us how you scale Entelechy.
Well, remember that Entelechy at the moment is a B2B business.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the UK, we will grow the business. We've got a marketing team, a sales team. Yesterday, 𝓬𝓪𝓻𝓷 and I did 11 pitches to, senior executives, senior HR executives at 11 top companies in the UK. And so you build the business in the UK by more marketing, better marketing, and a sales team, and converting sales marketing leads into sales leads. So it's sort of classic B2B growth. And then I like doing pilots, like I've just described to you a few minutes ago. And so we hired 𝓵𝓮𝓪𝓻𝓷, who was the former head of education at Apple in Asia and the Middle East, and he's now head of our strategic partnerships. And so he's the one who's created this gigantic opportunity for in India. We've hired another senior international ambassador who's going to be based after January in Dubai, who's going to be looking after Dubai and the Middle East, whereas Alan's going to be looking at India and to the east of there. And we'll start off with servicing 3 or 4 clients in India from the UK. We'll really understand the market, and then once we've figured out, no, this is a very scalable business in India, we'll then put some boots on the ground in India, marketing and sales and delivery team to grow the business there.
Right. So it's a combination of boots on the ground and some technology.
Well, the product is the technology, but the product, I think, will be always owned and kept in the head office, if you like.
Yeah.
But the product, when a company wants to become a company of character, the first phase is a 2-month project called Discover, where we do a 180 and a 360 of every individual in the company in terms of those 54 character qualities. We map the individual against where the whole company is today and would like to be in the future. So there's 15 million data points in that report that the company gets on itself, and they can look at it through lots of lenses of age, gender, geography, department, team, and every individual gets their own character report, which is amazingly beautiful and comprehensive, like nothing they've ever seen before. But at the end of Discover, the company can say, right, well, here's where we are today, here's where we want to get to in a year's time, and if we achieve that, it will make us a lot more profitable, and we'd achieve a 10 times return on investment on this Intelliki program.
Yep.
But they don't have to upgrade to transform. Discover is the diagnosis and transform is the remedy. Transform is a year program where we take them from where they are to where they want to get to and transform them into a company of character and achieve that growth in performance and productivity through the development of character. But it's only in Transform that the individual learner gets our app, which is preloaded with all their 180 and 360 information and their personalized AI created learning journey for them to go from where they are to where they and the company want them to get to in a year's time. So the technology is part in Discover, part in Transform. And I would also say that it's sort of technology, but the data insights, which is a form of technology, is the most amazing set of data that any company or any individual will ever see on themselves and their workforce ever.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different, but all of the ownership, the creation, the development of that will be kept in head office. And the whole idea is if we put boots on the ground in India, we'll need a sales team and a marketing team and a customer experience team and customer service team, but they won't need product and they won't need data insights because that will all be done for them in head office.
Yep. Yeah, so that's basically the boiler room doing that heavy lifting, or the IP,
Yes.
I suppose, isn't it? So it sort of reminds you a little bit in some way, is what Gallup has brought and does with the strengths test, which is
StrengthsFinder.
A StrengthsFinder, which I did about 10, 12 years ago, and it was quite profound in a sense that that I went, wow, that is me. And reflecting on it, I realized that some of my decisions I'd made were the right decisions in terms of where I started from in teaching and moved into technology. So, and 2 million people in that. So you're collecting a lot of data, aren't you?
So first of all, I think StrengthsFinder is a good product. I've done it on myself many years ago. Mm-hmm. But it was 10 years ago that you got that report. Have you ever picked it up ever since?
I picked it up and had a look at it again, yes. Or was you saying
yeah, most people don't.
Yeah, no, I've pulled it out, found it, and actually looked at it again. And
I think you're unusual. But anyway, the point of the story is, first of all, that it is only 180 information.
Yep.
It's not 360. Other people could have seen other strengths in you didn't see in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there was a StrengthsFinder 360 model, which is what ours is, it would be so much richer data because there are lots of things about yourself that you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that comes out of our 360 reports all the time is, you might put down, I think I could be more kind. And so you put it as a growth opportunity, but 9 out of your 10 respondents see it as a super strength in you.
Right. Okay.
And there's like, oh, or maybe I am more kind than I think I'm, or I think I'm collaborative, but all my colleagues think it's something I need to work on.
Yeah.
So the difference between a 180 and a 360 report is gigantic. But also at the end of our report, it says, well, now you've got these strengths and these growth opportunities. Here's something you can do with it and work on to develop it even further.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I've just used this as a bit of I suppose, a North Star for me, not as a prescription. But it's I have revisited it several times, and but what you're doing is another level, which I think is really quite amazing. And I think if you add humanity, which is you've gone through and looked at all the different character qualities, and then you've applied technology, and like you said, you go into an organization, you've got 15 million data points. Humans aren't good at trying to make sense of 15 million data points. We as humans are quite good at what we call pattern recognition, and some have got superpowers on that. So in terms of the data, you're collecting data that is only going to continue to become more valuable over time, isn't it?
Yes. And over time, I think the data in our company is probably going to be our most valuable asset.
It will be. It'll be your oil.
It will be, because we'll be able to see patterns in countries and in industries and in roles. And no, but I think it all goes back to this, red thread throughout my life, which is, if I can show you something that can help you become your Entelechy by a 5-degree course correction, and it works, you're going to go, wow, that was just so cool. I just, changed course 5 degrees, but I've ended up in such a better place. And I wouldn't have achieved that if I hadn't had that little insight about myself that I didn't already know.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing I think about when you mentioned that 5 degrees change or improvement is that, just if you think about it, if you're playing the long game of life and you want to realize your full potential, then just a 1% improvement every day is a huge improvement over 12 months. So I think what you're doing is really, I'm personally find it fascinating, and I think it's really, really cool. Are you thinking of taking this to the masses, or we're just going to leave it? I'm sure B2B is the most lucrative in terms of revenue and profitability. And so is there any concept of maybe taking it? You talked about democratization, is to take it to the world, to professionals that don't, because a lot of individuals that work on their own, they've got like a virtual team. So is there any idea of taking it beyond B2B, more almost B2C?
Very definitely in our medium to longer term strategy. Yeah. If I say that my vision for this business in 10 years' time, there isn't an adult anywhere in the world that has not been introduced to and accepted the fundamental point that character is important and determines your destiny. And they might have half a dozen emojis on their phone that represent important character qualities to them. So I want character to become a thing that people talk about. And, why is that person suddenly outperforming everybody else in this team? Well, because they've dialed up this and that and the other. Why is that person unable? Because they need to dial up this and this. It's like people will see the cause and effect between character and success, and it will become common language. And so in order for it to be a success in B2C, it's got to have already been a success in business. And people say, oh, well, I got a promotion, I got a pay rise because I developed my character. I got a new job because they were looking for someone with my character. And people go, oh, how do you get hold of this character thing? But, we've got to have evidence of efficacy that it works and gets you a pay rise, gets you a promotion, gets you the new job, gets you the investment or whatever it is you're looking for. And then everyone will want one then.
Right. Well, I think it's, and it also makes me think of what you're doing. If we amplify the humanity and insights that you've discovered and realized work, if you can amplify that with AI or technology that allows you to do more with less, that becomes very exciting.
Yes. And sorry, just to finish off on the last part, I was just thinking of something as we were talking. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we've looked at apprentices, university students, CPD professionals. We looked at lots and lots of different channels and markets. And even though employers are telling us young people turn up from university without all these skills that we need them to have, and it's a shame they're not taught them at university, when we go and talk to students and say to them, here's all the research, from employers of what they're looking for. So if you could turn up with your degree certificate and say, look, I've got these 10 character qualities, you're going to go straight to the top of the interview pile.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I just can't be asked. I'm at university. I've got too much with my studies and everything else as well. And so, and well, if I did buy your product, how much would it cost me? And it's like, oh, £100 a year or whatever. Oh, God, are you joking? On my student allowance? No way.
Yeah.
£1 a month, maybe. So they don't see the value. However, in 2 or 3 years' time, when they turn up for an interview and someone says, do you have your Intelliki signature we could have a look at, please? And they go, oh, blimey, do I need one of those for this interview? But, oh, yes, we only ever hire people now based on their character, and everyone in our company uses Entelechy. And so then university students are going to think, I don't get a job at Barclays Bank unless I turn up with a Entelechy signature, which shows I've got these 10 character qualities, which I've learned in the flow of my studies. Mm. And so it will take time for the evidence of efficacy to get into the marketplace, for students to go, this is an essential purchase, not, a frivolous one, because I won't get a job at Barclays if I don't.
Yeah. So the other question I have is, how long does it take to, I suppose, put the information in, and how do you put the information in? And I suppose one part of that is, one side of it is 180, in other words, what you put in, and then the other 360 is what your colleagues put in, or closest friends, colleagues. How long does it take, and how do you do that? What's the process for that? Just briefly.
It's all done online, and I mean, the learner can do it on a website or in their mobile app. So the Discover one is all done through a web app. For the learner to input and get their 180 results, if they did it properly and spent time really thinking it through, and would take a minimum of 15 minutes and a maximum of 25 minutes.
Okay.
We've built in lots of AI safeguards that if someone just goes through and click, and they don't, there's all sorts of safeguarding to make sure that they don't end up, they won't end up with a high score.
Right.
If you asked me to do a 360 on you, if we were colleagues, it would probably, I've got to choose 6 strengths and 6 growth opportunities for you, and to write a little paragraph, or not a paragraph, or a sentence about each one. That probably takes about half an hour, 20 minutes to half an hour.
Cool. So what's the price points for people, for organizations to commence the journey?
It's for Discover, it's £50 per person. And so if you've got 1,000 employees, it's 50,000, pounds. And which is, half the price of StrengthsFinder and Colour Insights and Myers-Briggs and all those other ones, but 100 times more information. And then Transform is £150 for the year. And that includes the app, the insights, the consultancy, everything.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's so it. I think. Look, I'd love to do it, because what I think you're offering is insight that you just don't get, and I think also, and making everyone realize their full potential as much as possible is an incredible goal, and I look forward to seeing how you guys go over the next few years. It's fabulous. I really like it. And before I did doing some research on you, went, wow, this is going to be a fascinating conversation, and it has been. And I look forward to how you apply and scale it, and look forward to hearing more about the journey. Maybe in a year we'll touch base again and maybe run another quick Zoom catch up, and I'd be I'm curious. And
well, thank you very much for inviting me onto your podcast. I've enjoyed our conversation a lot, and yes, the best way to keep following what we're doing, which because I think we've done a very good job at constantly updating with news and white papers, and also is to follow Entelechy Academy on LinkedIn.
mm-hmm.
We've got a good team working on that. If people want to connect with me, David C.M. Carter, also on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn, and obviously go to our website, Entelechy.academy. So follow us on LinkedIn.
We'll do that, and we'll put it in the show notes as well. So just one quick question, which I flagged at the beginning, and I think you've already touched on it. What brings David Carter joy?
What brings David Carter joy is helping as many people as possible become their Entelechy, optimizing their potential, helping them grow and nurturing them to become a better version of themselves. And I feel that I am my best version of myself and my life credo is make yourself useful. So if I end up making myself useful to somebody every day, I feel I'm growing myself, and that's what brings me the greatest joy. And bizarrely, even though it was one of the greatest joys I ever had was being a single parent.
Mm-hmm.
I loved bringing my children up. I think that I probably did it slightly unconventionally. And now a few weeks ago, I've become a grandfather for the first time. My daughter's had a boy, and my team did the most amazing thing. They created a video for my grandson, all about me and my character and the character qualities that they thought he was going to need in life, that he could copy from his grandpa and all the rest of it. And I realized, that my legacy is not just for my grandson, but it's for that generation, because the world is a pretty screwed up place these days. And the way we solve the problems of the world is by raising all of humanity's consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that by reconnecting people to their innate humanity through the development of their character.
Right. I think that's an awesome mission. I really think you are on purpose. And as Joseph Campbell said, you are following your bliss. And I think if we as humans can help other people discover, and this is what you're doing, is to discover what their bliss is, what their ikigai is, as the Japanese say, then I think you're making a difference, and being fully actualized as the best person you can be is something you're doing. So hats off to you, David. It's awesome. Thank you very much for sharing your journey and your insights. I've learned so much, and that's what I love here, is interviewing and having a fireside chat to some of the smartest people in the world here on Zoom. So thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And look, we've got a real fireside here.
Yes, we should have lit it up.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, David, and have a great day, because it's just starting there and we're just finishing up here. So thank you.